In the history of 60 Minutes, I'm not sure we've ever reported a story that for the most part is pure fantasy. But that's how to best sum up QAnon, an ever-shifting mega conspiracy theory that's bizarre and nonsensical. As wacky as it is, though, millions of people appear to be caught up in the internet-based cult, including more and more Australians. And that means there are dangerous, real-world consequences that demand the rest of us stop scratching our heads in disbelief and start to take serious notice of QAnon.
Do you want to free yourself? It's easy. Follow Q.
If QAnon was a movie script, it would be too far-fetched.
The world is currently witnessing the largest mass treason event in living history.
The world ruled by a cabal of Satan-worshipping elites who prey on children and harvest their blood. With Donald Trump, our only saviour, ready to defeat the forces of darkness.
Risk their lives to achieve this victory against the greatest force of evil the world has ever known.
And that's just the start.
That's just the headline-based theory. It goes so much deeper than that.
Discover the names and faces of the cabal agents who have colluded to destroy our republic and bend us to their will.
How deep does it go?
The German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, is Hitler's natural daughter. There's theories about Donald Trump being a time traveler, aliens, any conspiracy theory you've ever heard, including many you haven't, find a home in QAnon.
But I mean, you couldn't have believed that stuff, surely.
I went all the way up to aliens.
Jatath Jadeja is an ordinary guy who fell headlong into this extraordinary world. An economics student who, for 2.5 years, lived and breathed the ultimate conspiracy theory in all its madness. Jatath, how does a guy from suburban Sydney end up down the QAnon rabbit hole?
I was very disconnected from reality, I think, and I just was looking for answers, and that's how I found QAnon. It was all day, every day. It was like QAnon was my job, basically. You just become like that crazy homeless guy on the street shouting about Judgment Day, and you just make an ass out of yourself at all these parties, right? No one wants to talk to you. People are like, oh, it's weird. What are you doing, right?
It all began in December 2017, when Jatath was struggling to finish his degree. He became socially isolated and was drawn to the conspiracies swirling online. Stumbling onto QAnon, he fell for it, hook, line and sinker.
People have heard the same thing about QAnon, like this cabal of elite pedophiles and satanic blah, blah, blah. It's a very dark world.
You thought that politicians were pedophiles?
Yeah, especially, post Jeffrey Epstein, Jimmy Savile as well. I definitely thought that there was a cabal of elite pedophiles. This is almost like an existential battle between good and evil, like angels and demons.
It's just fantasy, right? This is not real.
It's not, but then of course not. Like what you do...
But how could you believe it? How could you believe something so fantastical?
What you do is that you want something to be true. I wanted someone to save us.
To comprehend how someone could believe the unbelievable, you first have to understand how QAnon works and just how seductive this parallel world can be.
QAnon is a cult-like conspiracy theory that holds that a military intelligence insider is using a variety of message boards to leak clues to an upcoming purge of the deep state.
You've lost me already. It's sort of hard to keep up.
It is. Anytime you spend any kind of time talking about this in any kind of depth, people just immediately glaze over. And that's one of the reasons why it's been so hard to get people to take it seriously, because it is so bizarre.
Mike Rothschild is a leading writer and researcher on conspiracy theories who spent the past year trying to make sense of it all.
QAnon can get as crazy as you want it to be. If you want to believe that Joe Biden is a clone, if you want to believe that John F. Kennedy Jr. has been hiding in a bunker for 20 years, if you want to believe that the Earth is part of a galactic federation of light, that's all there for you.
That's why we have Q. The good guys with control over the NSA began the Q intelligence dissemination program to invoke an online grassroots movement that came to be called the Great Awakening.
The original prophecy of QAnon is that Donald Trump is going to unleash a purge, a mass arrest of the pedophile cabal that runs the world. Well, Donald Trump can't do that anymore. But they're not going to give up on believing QAnon. They've come too far. They've sacrificed too much. This is too much a part of who they are to walk away from it.
Save our children!
Precise numbers are impossible to gauge, but millions of people are thought to be caught up in QAnon's wacky beliefs.
There are people in QAnon who are really just concerned about children. There are people in QAnon who really just hate Hillary Clinton. And there are people who do want to overthrow the government. So it appeals to almost everybody, and it really is almost anybody that can be sucked into it.
We'll be looking into that over the next short period.
Incredibly, it all stems from a single offhand comment made by Donald Trump in October 2017.
You guys know what this represents?
He was having dinner with a bunch of uniformed military higher-ups, and he said,
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
this could be the calm before the storm.
What's the storm? Could be the calm before the storm.
And the press was like, what are you talking about?
What storm, Mr. President?
You'll find out.
Now, in reality, he wasn't saying anything. That's what Donald Trump did as president. He just said stuff. But people wanted there to be a storm. People wanted there to be the punishment of enemies. And it caught on very quickly because of that.
On forums in the darkest recesses of the internet, vague and cryptic messages began to be posted, supposedly by a mysterious figure known as Q. Crumbs of information that were shared and deciphered by an online army eager to interpret their meaning.
It was like a Tom Clancy novel happening right outside your door, and then people wanted to be part of that.
Spawning ever more outlandish explanations about what was really going on.
The followers think of themselves as geniuses, as sort of playing this 5D high-level chess that Donald Trump also plays. But the reason why QAnon is so convoluted is actually the same reason why a lot of conspiracy theories are really convoluted. The more details you add to something, the more real it sounds.
So is the idea that the rest of us are ignorant if we don't understand it?
Yes, the rest of us are asleep, but the Q people want to wake us up. They don't want to hurt us, they want to teach us. They want us to join them. And that's one of the things that's so appealing about QAnon is this idea of secret knowledge. This idea that I know something that you don't know powers so much of conspiratorial thought.
The only thing Q wants you to do is think for yourself and expand your thinking and find out for yourself. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Turbocharged by fears about COVID, QAnon has found fertile ground here in Australia.
This is between good and evil, and we...
Pulling believers from every walk of life. Michelle Gilman is a hard-working single mum who's raised 2 kids. Back in QAnon's early days, at the age of 51, she headed down the rabbit hole into a warren of unconventional thinking where nothing is quite as it seems.
Once I discovered an alternative narrative, it really started to change the way I think. I mean, there's 4,953 Q posts.
And you work through every one of them?
I've read every one of them, yeah. Or I've listened to someone interpret every one of them.
So for you, Q is a person?
Q's more than one person, and I believe it's a team of people with very high-level intelligence clearance, and that comes through with some of the posts that Q has put out.
It's time to research for yourself. You will find many things, among them an unprecedented number.
With the dedication of a scholar, Michelle has studied this alternate reality, forming her own worldview, very different to that of mainstream society.
It probably makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I'm quite happy to wear that tag if people want me to be that. But
Are you a conspiracy theorist?
no, I just believe in questioning. I was always a bit suspicious about the 9/11 thing.
So you don't believe 9/11 happened?
Oh, I don't know whether it did or not. It hasn't been proven either way. I don't know who the people were that flew planes in. The murder of JFK, the murder of JFK Jr.
You think there was a deep state conspiracy behind that?
I think there's a deep state group of people that are behind that, yeah. This could get me into big trouble, you know.
What?
Giving up this being on television talking about this sort of stuff.
Why?
Well, because there are a lot of people that don't want that information to come out.
It may have begun as an online conspiracy, but the shockwaves of QAnon have already spread far beyond the virtual world. Not only did its supporters lead the storming of the US Capitol building, kidnaps, assassination plots and murder have all been linked to QAnon fanatics, including this bombing in Nashville on Christmas Day, carried out by a man convinced the world is controlled by a race of reptiles disguised as humans.
You know, while we may say it's foreign to Australia, it's not. It's here, and there are people here who believe this stuff.
Nick Caldis is a former top cop who is concerned about what could happen here in Australia.
Loving patriots, just trying to break free from the prison of the mind that was created for them.
Not only do authorities now have to recognise what a threat it is, but they've got to act. You can't ignore it anymore. I think we have seen, obviously, right-wing extremism and really nutty conspiracy theorists before, but the magnitude and the reach and their ability to influence people is probably unprecedented. So it's no longer just a very fringe group that you can discount and say, well, they're just a bunch of nuts. They are having an impact, and I don't for a minute doubt that there are a number in Australia who may ultimately move from rhetoric to some sort of action.
As a counter-terrorism expert, Nick sees strong parallels with Islamic terror and believes we need to monitor QAnon with a similar vigilance. Should police be treating QAnon in the same way they would treat a terrorist organisation?
I would argue yes, simply because they're capable of inspiring, commissioning, and encouraging others to do things in support of them or their beliefs.
Yeah, it's alarming when you think that a fringe conspiracy theory can get to the point where it becomes a global threat.
Absolutely. And you see it in terrorism, where a lot of people who inspire others to do this stuff are not prepared to put themselves in danger, but they're happy to send kids in suicide vests to go and do it on their behalf. I wouldn't put that sort of selfishness apart from QAnon. I think they're very capable of it.
Trump supporters are not violent people. Q supporters are not violent people.
Did what happened at the Capitol not seem violent to you?
Yeah, it was pretty outrageous, but there's a lot that's not being told. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's not being told.
Michelle Gilman sees QAnon as a force for good, not evil.
Welcome to my circle.
She believes we all need to wake up to what's going on around us and the threat posed by what she calls the deep state.
These criminals are also known as the deep state, or cabal, because of how they control things behind the scenes.
Well, the deep state's the elites of the world. The deep state's the people that have all the money. Look what they've got planned for the world. One world government, no borders, no sovereignty. They're trying to take away people's free speech. They're trying to take away people's right to protest. So,
when you say that people's speech is being suppressed, that you feel as though you're being silenced?
I don't think anyone's intentionally silencing me, but we hesitate to speak out because people think you're crazy, you know, and...
Do you think you're crazy?
No, I don't think I'm crazy. I just think I know what I know, and I'm pretty confident in the information that I've been given. So, thank you. Do I sound crazy?
I don't think I really knew what QAnon was for a long while. And then, yeah, I sort of had to start looking into it a little bit more and was like, oh, okay, there's actually a lot to unpack here. There's a lot going on.
Michelle's daughter Charlotte has had to do plenty of research herself to understand her mum's newfound views of a world where Donald Trump's political rivals harvest the blood of children.
I was like, oh, so you don't actually believe this, right? And she was like, no, it actually happens if you do the research and you look into it. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, it's sort of something much bigger than I'd anticipated, really. It's not every day that you find out that your mum thinks that there's youth serum being distributed to the higher powers in secret.
You look like besties there.
Yeah, that's my mum, my best friend.
As her only daughter, Charlotte has always been very close to her mum.
I think we're definitely closer than most mother and daughter, for sure.
But QAnon has taken a serious toll on their relationship.
She's almost like created a different realm. It's a different reality, really, to the point where I just got frustrated because it's like, I can't really have a conversation with you because we can't just agree on the basic principles of what's happening.
We would argue. So we'd have discussions and sometimes they'd get a bit heated. Sometimes they get a lot heated. And she'd shut it down, we'd shut it down.
I think it was about 2 or 3 months before the election, I was like, we're finished. Like, I need to not speak to you until this is done. And even prior to that, every conversation we'd have would end in screaming or crying or this or that. You just don't know anything anymore. It's like, if my mum can fall for this crap, then what hope is there for the rest of us?
Jatath Jadeja knows firsthand the impact QAnon can have on relationships with others and how the isolation it brings can become a vicious cycle.
QAnon only adds to that because it separates them from society, from their family and their friends. There's parents who have threatened their children, kicked them out of their house. There's decades-long marriages that have broken up, you know.
So families are losing loved ones to this theory, this crazy conspiracy.
They've already lost. Hundreds of thousands have already lost. Like, it's an epidemic.
Are you grateful you came out of it?
I'm very grateful. I'm not sure how it happened. I feel like I dodged a bullet.
Stepped out of the darkness to the light.
Jatath spent 2.5 years caught in the grip of QAnon before he finally got out. Quite unexpectedly, it was all thanks to Donald Trump.
There was a straw that broke the camel's back at a time when I was probably about teetering on the edge. Essentially, someone asked QAnon to get Trump to repeat a phrase in order to prove some kind of connection between Q and Trump. And the phrase was tip-top, tippy-top shape. 4 months later, Donald Trump used that phrase in front of the White House.
It is special, and we keep it in tip-top shape. We call it sometimes tippy-top shape.
I was like, wow, that's a very unique phrase. I've never heard that phrase before, right? That has to prove some kind of connection. It was only until much, much later when I looked into it a little deeper, that is just something that Donald Trump says. He says that from time to time. It's like a personal catchphrase of his.
My club's at tippy-top. It's got to be in tip-top shape. Everything was tippy-top.
It was the obvious manipulation in this that A, someone had to pick up on the fact that Donald Trump says this phrase.
I like tippy-top.
To find a way to use that in order to slide it into this sort of conspiracy as proof was almost genius, really. It was genius. And I looked at that and I thought, I've been manipulated here. It's so obvious I've been manipulated. So that was my moment. And I sort of, I just felt the world sort of crash in on me and I threw out every single conspiracy theory I'd ever heard.
These days, Michelle and Charlotte have made their peace.
And I missed you. I missed you too.
Although they tried to avoid too much political discussion, agreeing to disagree about their very different views of the world. So you've been able to find this peace, but ultimately you still believe in Q? You still disagree with your mum's beliefs?
Heavy opposite, yeah. Yeah, completely on the opposite spectrum, really. Yeah, I still think she's being hoodwinked and I'm excited to be proven wrong.
Is there a part of you that wonders whether you've been hoodwinked here?
Oh, a little bit, yeah. And I've had that conversation with Charlotte. It's like, if I'm wrong, I'll, declare that I'm wrong, I'll concede and...
But you don't think you are?
I know I'm not. I really, really know I'm not.
Jatath Jadeja has seen QAnon from both sides and views the world as a much nicer place without conspiracies in his life. But with Trump's chances of fulfilling the prophecy of Q slipping away, what followers call the storm, he worries about what might happen next. Should Australians be alarmed?
Yeah. 100%. Why wouldn't you be alarmed? QAnon has only been around since October 2017. That's not even 4 years, and it's now got millions of people around the world. They're harmed because they still think this plan is going to happen and Donald Trump is in control. If they become the storm, if they start thinking they need to bring about this doomsday, imagine what they could do.
Hello, I'm Sarah Abo. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.